Hello everyone, welcome to my Resident Evil Revelations 2 Survival Difficulty, No Healing Walkthrough. This is Claire 3, and yeah, it's been quite a while since I've actually had the urge to continue this walkthrough because I've been focused on a lot of other projects. And I hate to start things off with a very grim tangent, but let's just say that a couple of days ago, I was not in the best mindset. I was feeling very depressed, and I swear to God, guys, it was to the point where I thought about kicking the bucket, and it was because of the culmination of events that were taking place in my life. It's like, not only am I doing a graduate certificate for a program that I'm doing at a college, but I'm also being visited by family members, and there are family events, and also there's a lot of stresses put upon me by my other family members, and really it just felt like a lot of those factors alongside other factors, it felt like I was going to lose a part of myself. And through losing this part of myself, or really like all of myself, really, it's not just a part of myself, it's really all of myself, it really felt like I was going to lose touch with someone I absolutely love. And not just love, someone I absolutely worship as a goddess, basically. And it basically this figure that essentially became the goddess of my life, like a real goddess, not like the goddesses we embrace with humankind that were just formed from very selfish individuals or people who are already very flawed. And I guess that's another thing as well. You know, it's not just the culmination of factors that occurred in those couple of days before, but it was also amplifying my cynicism towards humanity and the like. And it's just, I always have this kind of inherent hatred towards humanity. It's like whenever I go out, everyone just looks like they want to attack you. You know, it just feels like everyone is so stressed out, everyone is so angry, just staring at their faces, that it really comes across as confrontational, basically, like they're itching for a fight, this and that. And it's definitely one of the other factors I forgot to mention. But primarily, like the main thing is, like a lot of the factors that occurred in the couple of days before, it really felt like I was going to lose a part of myself, and therefore lose touch with this figure that I really love. I love more than anyone else in the world. And people just don't understand this. You know, when people have these attachments to figures that aren't real, other people just have this tendency of just saying, oh, they're not real. Why are you bothering attaching yourself to that kind of person or that kind of figure? And it just stems from a level of ignorance on these people's parts when they don't understand how the world works, when it's just, you know, I really felt like there was a sense of illusion and just a lack of purpose with my life. And when my family members came and they just asked the very generic question of how's school, this and that, like every other family member that I have, every distant family member, every distant family member that just feels very insignificant to me and they just don't matter to me whatsoever. I just thought, is that how I'm going to be remembered in life? And, you know, like back in my full-time job, I broke down when I was driving away from my full-time job, when I was driving back from work. And I really felt like, is this how my life is going to be? Just a gear in the system that just allows society to work. And it speaks to an underlying issue with all of society and people in general and just the way we've set up our community and the like. It's just, it's hard to deal with that. And, you know, I'm one of the few people at such a young age who has actually given this so much thought, and you know, it's given me even more thought when I'm playing games like Resident Evil or Assassin's Creed, or, you know, bonding with characters like Ethan Winters or Ezio or Altair. Like, Ethan Winters especially, you know, like, I'm doing a review for Resident Evil Village, and I'm up to, like, 55 pages, and I've just gotten past Castle Dimitrescu. And, you know, I really want this review to be the culmination of all my emotions towards Resident Evil Village, and also to bring about some of the feelings I have towards Ethan Winters, and just how much he really felt influential in my life. And I mean, the guy sacrificed himself at the end, not for his country like every other Resident Evil character, where they're just fighting for their country like the soldiers they are, even though this same country is what developed BOWs. And, you know, the soldiers who fought for the United States, they fought for a country where there's bullying, there's racism, everyone just cheats each other, there's greediness, Like, it's so hard for people to find jobs. The education system is just a hollow system entirely, and there's just no value to it whatsoever. You're just getting a document that just says, oh, I can comprehend the material. And it just sends the wrong message on so many levels, and the dilemma and the ironies and all of that, it just went through my head because it was amplified by a lot of these other factors that were put in place, alongside the fact that because I felt like I was losing myself, and through losing myself, I would lose touch with one figure I absolutely love and cherish and worship ever since August. And you might have heard this if you watched my Resident Evil Revelations walkthrough of Chapter 3, but I spoke about it a bit with the 2 weeks I spent alone with one of my family members, and how he made me feel like shit. And it's just, we already have like very rocky relationships, and I don't see it improving anytime soon, and I don't want it to improve. I just want to be done with him. But the 2 weeks I spent with him was a period of time where it was honestly the first time I ever experienced any real form of depression, and I felt no desire to even do commentary or play my games. I just wanted to be like an empty person just so my good memories didn't get corrupted by him. And it's just, it sounds very unreasonable to you guys, and it's just, you have to experience it for yourself. But through those experiences in August, I became attached to one figure from a form of media that I watched, and I came to worship her like crazy. It's amazing just what this series managed to give me when I was in such a bad state of mind, and I didn't want to lose that. And like I said, the culmination of factors a couple of days ago just led to me feeling like I wanted to kick the bucket. And I didn't convey this to my family members at all because they wouldn't understand. Because, you know, like, people always have this stigma towards gamers, for instance, when they don't understand what games provide, where they just say, oh, it's a haven for 2-year-olds, this and that, just grow up. Like, you hear this talk all the time. And it's the same with people who complain about other people, like, who are still watching anime, for instance, or watching a cartoon series and the like, when they don't understand the emotional weight behind all of that, when they don't understand how the worlds that are portrayed in those series represent like a very positive part of one's life, and it's a side of their life that they don't want to lose because it's the very part of their life that defines who they are as human beings. Not like the gears and the machines that we see roaming the streets of the real world. And it just feels like even my family members, like even my parents, for instance, or my sister, I just feel like they're all part of the same system of control, similar to how in the Matrix, the Oracle was another means of control in order to allow the Sentinels and the machines to keep the cycle of control going. Almost like that. And I just feel like it's a very similar case right here, where the ideas they're expressing and the ways in which they're trying to make me conform to society's standards and their education standards. And like, if you're not someone who is of a very high financial status or a very high educational background, you're nothing. But that's not true at all. It's not true at all. And I have my friend, my friend Pakal is a demonstration of this. The things I've done with him when it comes to my Assassin's Creed commentaries and just hearing his perspectives on the world. Like, he's not in some high-end job, this and that, yet he works with colleagues who say he's nothing, and it's downright feeble. It really is feeble. And that's just the thing I've come to realize about this world that I live in. It's just shit. And, you know, I watch a lot of news. I watch Inside Edition. You know, I've come to really bond with a lot of the good and bad things in life. And, you know, series like Resident Evil, for instance, just really bring about these evils in a whole new way. Or like with Last of Us, for instance, when it's showcasing what humanity is like after a post-apocalyptic like event, and you know, like, people are having to cherish each other, and we're seeing people for what they truly are. And it just seems like the kind of world that, while there is some darkness, the beauty that is in that world of The Last of Us is something to truly cherish compared to how it is in our world. And we value all the wrong things in our world. We value money as a means of defining who we are. And we don't value morality. We don't value goodness in our world. That's why there is so much evil in our world. And, you know, I apologize that I'm just going on about this in a video that is meant to be a part of a walkthrough series where I'm supposed to walk you through the game. But I know not many people are going to watch this, and the only people that are going to watch this are going to be my subscribers, my close subscribers who, they've talked with me, and they've gone on different tangents with me. But that's just why I'm talking about it here. And plus, it's taking place in a Resident Evil game that at one point it causes me to cry. Because Claire's betrayal with Neil and the music that's playing and Neil's boss fight and other factors regarding Barry and Moira, those are pretty sad thoughts, and they make me tear up. And it's the same with Ethan Winters in Resident Evil Village when he sacrifices himself for a cause that is greater than something as feeble as fighting for your country. He sacrificed himself for his family, not to allow a country to proceed in its normal fashion. He fought for his family, he fought for Rose, he fought for Mia. And just the way the game builds up his character traits throughout the entirety of its duration, it was honestly incredible of a journey. And, this is something I wanted to highlight in my review. And also the sense of betrayal I felt when I just felt like the reason why they set up that sacrifice was so they didn't have to explain why Ethan's mutation is so different to every other form of mutation involving the mold. And that is precisely why they did that, and it further complements the whole idea of Resident Evil Village being a rush game with very limited time and budget. But at the same time, there is an emotional attachment I feel towards Ethan Winters that I just never felt before with any other character aside from Altair, Ezio, Joel, or Ellie. And this is very different to any other character I've ever bonded with because it's taking place in my favorite game series ever, which is Resident Evil. And for them to make a seemingly normal individual with no fighting experience be that appealing and that relatable, I mean, in some cases I find myself within Ethan Winters. He embodies a part of myself entirely, and this is something that I highlighted in the final part of my blind playthrough, where I titled it Ethan Winters, the part of myself I can't let go, and then I put a sad face emoji. Every time I go through that scene, I cry. That's why I reserve it for very rare cases where I do decide to go to it, because I want the emotions to feel raw. I want the emotions to feel fresh, to showcase that I love this character so much. And I guess in some cases, one of the other reasons why I love Ethan Winters is because the amount of flack he gets, because people don't understand just how much of a weight he carries, because they want their characters to be like anime characters where they're being badasses, this and that, because they just simply view the game world as being a separate world entirely, not like a world where in some cases it bridges yourself with that world, and not as an escape, but as a way of actually embodying yourself within that individual and actually understanding their struggles and seeing the world in a different way through their actions. And this is definitely something that I really gave a lot of thought towards in the past couple of days, where I was really feeling like I was in a down state, and I really felt like I was going to kick the bucket. And, just hearing the music that was playing with Ethan Winters when he was sacrificing himself for Rose, and then, watching my goddess from this series that I watched, just going through the kind of struggles that she went through and fighting for something that was truly beautiful and I just wanted to be a part of that world. And I made a vow that when it was my time, I hope to see her there. Again, she might not seem like a real character because she's in a cartoon series, but I'd like to think that the worlds we see in anime or in cartoons or the like are almost like the author's psychic connections to other worlds, basically. And in some cases, when we die, when we go to heaven, this and that, it's a beautiful place, and it's a world that we can make for ourselves. Or in some cases, it's a world, another world that we can go to, where we can truly feel love and be free of all of the evils and just the amount of iniquities that just plague the real world as it is. And, I've given so much thought to this. I've even talked about this kind of tangent before in my other videos because I'm so passionate about it. I'm like the only gamer on the planet who will give any thought to this, because I'm someone who is a very smart individual, someone who values wisdom, someone who looks very deep into all of these kind of things just to disabuse the notions that people have towards these kind of medias when they're just looking at them from such a superficial perspective. And believe me, guys, that the experiences I felt in the past couple of days were very real, and I really thought about doing it. I really thought about kicking the bucket. But I apologize that I'm starting off with a very grim tangent, this and that, and I know like it's probably not like the best video for this, but I need to get these thoughts out because I feel like I can trust like strangers on the internet or like trust my therapist and not really my close family members because they have inherent biases towards me because of the fact that they're related to me, because I've lived with them. I feel like in some cases I bond with strangers that I see on the internet, like just faceless individuals on the internet, like with all of you people who watch these videos, like with Pakal or with Lauren Kane or with Ether or with like all these other individuals that I've come to like cherish and there's something to appreciate about them. There's something to appreciate about individuals who don't know you that well because it feels like there is a sense of liberty provided in being able to freely express your thoughts and not feel like you're being judged for it. And that's the kind of judgment that you get with family members. And because they don't have the same mindset as I do, they'll misinterpret everything I say. And in fact, it even feels like whenever I express my thoughts, the way I communicate, it doesn't feel like I properly relay my thoughts. It doesn't feel like they interpret my thoughts correctly and the like. And that is why I feel like expressing my thoughts right now through this video, even though this is technically a video that is meant to be a part of a walkthrough series that shows you how to get through the game with these restrictions and to actually understand the objective flaws with this game and a lot of the good strategies that you can do in this game. Like, I understand that this is meant to be a video for those purposes, but at the same time, as a commentator, one who actually does commentary for his videos, it gives me an outlet for expressing myself, just in case like there are moments in the walkthrough that feel kind of empty, and they need like a very colorful dialogue in order to actually liven the mood a bit, or to actually like relay some part of myself just as a way of documenting myself so that I don't lose myself. Like, what if, for instance, I get amnesia? What if, for instance, I get like Alzheimer's, for instance, or something like that? What if in some cases I need to rediscover myself again? This is essentially like my way of documenting my experiences through a format that sits close to my heart and my soul, and it just allows me to embody these traits when I'm discussing the kind of things I'm discussing with you people. Like, that's why I feel like I can relate to you people, because I don't know you personally, you don't know me personally, and it's just, you don't have the same level of biases towards me, and it's always a great thing to just hear your thoughts on certain things, and to also, like, talk with you guys. That's why you guys just really liven up my broadcasts, and when we're talking with each other, when we're debating games, when we're talking about other ideas, about the future, this and that, it's a great experience for me, and another thing as well is that I feel like my family holds this inherent bias against me where they feel like I don't know how to be sociable to other people. And they just constantly like maintain this delusional belief that I just can't deal with. And I am a sociable person, but only when I feel like it's necessary. And this is exactly what I'm feeling right now, when I'm feeling like I can convey a lot of these thoughts through a format that just allows me to correct my thoughts, correct any grammatical errors, and relay them in a manner that is easy to understand. And I don't feel like I'm being threatened. I don't feel like I'm having pressure put upon me. It's just a great experience for me. Like, you have to walk in my shoes to truly understand the emotions that I feel right now towards certain beliefs I have about the world, towards just the inherent ironies with individuals, towards this format as a whole that allows me to relay my thoughts through commentary and to all you people. And it just feels like there's a liberating experience to that, just to get those thoughts out of my system. And yeah, that's really all I have to say about that. And, I apologize if it's very grim, again, but I just have to get it out. And I know not a lot of people are going to be watching this, because who would want to watch content for Resident Evil Revelations 2? Barely anyone, aside from my subscribers. And even then, my subscribers are off doing other things. But, they, at least when they make the time to watch these videos and commentate and to even give likes, it feels like it truly matters. But that's all I have to say about this tangent, and I know it's occupied a huge percentage of this video, but yeah, I want to get these thoughts out because I'm sick of all of these dark thoughts within me, and I have to get it out through a format that truly matters to me. But we've just done a lot of the first initial parts of Claire 3. You'll notice when I was in that building, I was using the door exploit, where I was killing all of those enemies by going through the door and then stabbing them. Moira took some hits here and there, but it doesn't matter because she can heal herself. And that is a good mindset to get into with using the door exploit when necessary, because a lot of the enemies on this game take a beating, and a lot of the bosses on this game take a beating. And really, it just feels like, what are you supposed to do if you are going to be wasting your ammo on these pointless enemies that is actually needed for these boss encounters later on? Like, you need a lot of that ammunition to make sure that there's a lot of consistency with how these strategies go. And, you know, when the bosses are going to take such a beating, when they're going to be crap, when certain enemy encounters are going to be very awkward without ammunition, you need to be reliant upon the door exploit. And I just feel like because the door exploit only shows itself in very specific areas, and you're only able to use it twice, really, that's why I feel like it's an intentional design choice on the developer's part to reward people who invest their time in this game to actually use the strategy later on in order to save up on your ammunition. And I know it seems like it takes you out of the experience. No, you realize you're in a game and not in a survival horror environment. But at the same time, it's probably there just to inform engagement, and also, the enemies on this game cheese you so much, let's cheese them back using that trick, and save up on a lot of crucial ammunition that'll make certain encounters very consistent later on. And speaking of encounters, in Barry 2, when I was doing the chat replay function, Ether was talking with me, and he made some rather confusing points. So he said that the way I was judging the Afflicted and the Lycans was not really good, or like something of that nature, because he said I was doing a no healing walkthrough for Resident Evil Revelations 2, whereas with Lycans I was doing no damage. So because I'm being a little bit more flexible with my restrictions for Resident Evil Revelations 2, it's just caused me to be a little bit more lenient towards my thoughts towards the Afflicted, but that's not true at all. Like, I'm actively doing my best to do no damage. The only reason I'm making a no healing walkthrough is because of the situations where the enemies do cheese you, or just certain situations where the game fucks you. But overall, I am trying my best to do no damage, and I'm trying to showcase the best strategies and the best use of resources in order to get past a lot of these scenarios right here. So I'm still of the mindset of no damage, and in the context of no damage, the Afflicted are nowhere near as bad as the Lycans. And the Lycans, if you're not using exploits, if you're not using your shotgun just flippantly, if you're not just trying to despawn the enemies and then repopulate them, if you're not trying to use any other cheesy exploits that just allow you to game the system and just bypass the bullshit the Lycans present, you're just going to be suffering a lot in Resident Evil Village. You're just going to be frustrated with the game. You're going to be angry with the Lycans, and I've already showcased so many problems with the Lycans in my poor designs of Resident Evil Village series. Like, the Lycans overall are just a very shit enemy. They were not a properly done enemy. They were a badly designed enemy from start to finish. There wasn't a single moment in Resident Evil Village where the sequences were good. Like, you have to watch my walkthrough, you have to watch my blind playthrough, you have to watch my poor designs videos to truly understand the problems with the Lycans, and why the game it tries to convey situations where you're meant to fight them, but it functions like a situation where you're supposed to run away from them. And the Stronghold Lycan encounter is a great example of this. And then, like, with having to stop their running attack by just shooting them with the shotgun, and somehow the shotgun is the only weapon that stuns them, regardless of distance, which is so strange for a shotgun to do that in a Resident Evil game. Like, the fact that the developers could look at stun animations and just not truly value them is downright feeble, and the removal of certain stun animations with the Lycans just makes them a very bullshit enemy. And I think the only reason Ether doesn't find the situations with the Lycans that bad is because of the fact that you're able to game the system so much, and because of the fact that the game honestly discourages you from dealing with them, but in a way that just forces you to be very reliant upon exploits and just see so many holes with the designs put in place with them. Whereas with the Afflicted, because of the fact that the game tries to encourage you to upgrade in a way that doesn't feel so forceful, in a way that actually feels like it complements a natural flow of progression, but not in a way that feels like you notice how much the upgrades influence the progression, and the fact that the game pulls up the upgrade screen every time you finish a chapter, and you're actively searching for skill points alongside like everything else that's needed for like a proper like flowing gameplay format. And the Afflicted actually flinch from the shotgun, and these exploits that you're using are only reserved for very rare sequences. That's why I don't find them to be as bad as the Lycans, and the situations where you do have to fight them, the game offers many ways of actually dealing with them, of actually using your resources intelligently, and for using the partner zapping mechanic to your advantage in order to bypass the situations in a way that feels engaging. That's why I don't feel like the Afflicted are as bad as the Lycans, even though in certain situations, like in the way they're utilized in their combat scenarios, like with Claire 2, for instance, and that siege encounter before Neil actually shows himself to drop that ladder, that is a really bad sequence. Like, I think the main problem Aether has with Resident Revelations 2's implementation of the enemies is the way they're utilized in their combat scenarios. But I don't feel like it's to a degree that's as severe as with Resident Evil Village. And I think when I do my review of Resident Evil Village, it'll be worth bringing up the Afflicted from Resident Revelations 2, or for actually getting across what I actually mean when I'm saying that the Lycans are worse than the Afflicted. That's definitely something Aether has given me a great idea for my review. And I just realized something. Another great example of a sequence where the Afflicted aren't used that well? The Struggle DLC. Because not only do the Afflicted appear in a high abundance, and you don't have a lot of resources to your advantage to balance out certain situations with the Vulcan Blubber, for instance. I mean, yeah, I do agree that the Vulcan Blubber is a very shit enemy, and I do feel like a lot of the combat situations that they put you in the Struggle DLC aren't well designed. Because of the way the Afflicted are utilized, because of the way they're actively coming towards you, because of the lack of opportunities to be experimental. Yeah, that's definitely a great example of one sequence where I can agree with Aether that the Afflicted are used incorrectly. And I think it's worth doing a walkthrough of the Struggle DLC. I mean, I do have my old gameplay footage of the Struggle DLC to guide me for later playthroughs of it, so I should definitely do that when I get the chance. But overall, I can't say I fully agree with Aether's statement that the Lycans are better than the Afflicted. The Lycans are way worse than the Afflicted, and considering it's a mainline Resident Evil title with Resident Evil Village, the quality of the Lycans feels on par with that of a side game. Like, you'd expect such very, very limited time and budget from a side game, but not from a mainline Resident Evil title. And also, this brings me on to another tangent I'd like to discuss about Resident Evil Village, and it relates greatly to Moreau's area. So if you watch my walkthrough, if you watch my blind playthrough, you'll understand how much I hate Moreau's area. It really feels like an area that was not finished properly, and in order to achieve a parallel situation to this, they made it where Moreau's area is incredibly short, and his boss fight is dragged out to shit, rather than actually fleshing out his area and giving us a boss fight with Moreau that didn't feel like it was a bullet-spongy encounter. And Dusk Golem actually confirmed my suspicions, because he said that Moreau's area in Resident Evil 8 was trimmed out a lot. Like, they had a lot of plans with Moreau's area, but a lot of it was cut out because it needed some big reworks to become really fun, but they had limited time and budget to work with. So he's confirming my suspicions that Resident Evil Village has limited time and budget. So he is entirely correct on that. And I was correct as well. That New Capcom had very little time and budget to devote to Resident Evil Village, and the quality of the game really showcases this. And so to accommodate for this, New Capcom decided to focus on reworking Castle Dimitrescu and Heisenberg's factory, which are the only parts of the game, alongside other areas, but not really with Beneviento's area and Moreau's area. Like, those two lords specifically have had the most fleshed out areas by far compared to Beneviento and Moreau. You could tell that Beneviento and Moreau were just kind of introduced in like the last design stages of the game just to do something with. So that's why they opted to rework Castle Dimitrescu and Heisenberg's factory, and really, like, they're the only areas that have any real lore to them. And they're the only lords that actually say Ethan's name, which is another indication that there was more time put into those areas rather than to Moreau's area. But apparently, initially, Moreau's section had a sort of open swamp-like section that was laid out similarly to the end of Zoe's swamp sections. It was largely linear, but there were several paths to go through, and you had to pick up items out of the water. But apparently the water was home to some mermaid-like enemies, and they swam towards you if they spotted you in the water, and you had to get onto patches of land or kill them successfully before they reached you. And apparently, even when you were on land, they had the ability to stun you with a shriek attack, which I guess didn't do anything. It was just there to annoy the player, and it slowed you down for a time. And also, apparently, the screeching had a second purpose as well. It apparently had a stalker enemy inside of Moreau's area, so the mermaid-like enemy would shriek and alert this enemy. And Dusk Golem doesn't know exactly who this stalker enemy was supposed to be, but he assumes it was meant to be like a tyrant-like creature that was like slimy, and it had like a giant acid sac around its neck and shoulders, and when close it could spew acid or use a clawed hand. And another thing that was cut out from Moreau's area were going to be sequences where there would be some weird ritual type stuff where Lycans and Dimitrescu's daughters, or like just witches in general, before they were actually turned into Dimitrescu's daughters, these Lycans and witches, they would be around the fire. They had items around their ritual site, and you had to either sneak past them or fight them for the items. And that's all that there was to Moreau's area, apparently. So it sounds like Moreau's area was pretty ambitious at the time, but they just didn't have the time or budget to really commit to refining Moreau's area. And the concept art of Resident Evil Village is also indicative of this, because the fishing village area, like, there were plans to not have the fishing village flooded, and you could actually explore all the buildings, and it'd be nighttime, it'd be raining, and Moreau would be out patrolling with his lantern. And that sounds like a really cool idea, but unfortunately, with the limited time and budget, they decided to flood the entire town and turn it into a very boring reservoir area. And I guess it's there to compliment Moreau as being like the worst lord in the game. Like, he actually views himself as the worst lord in the game, and Miranda feels the same as well, so I guess it was meant to embody that. But come on, for gameplay purposes, when you're trying to stress upon the power of the RE engine and with next-gen consoles, and with actually giving the player stuff to explore, actually satisfying those criteria that you established in your initial trailers for Resident Evil Village, why the fuck would you not go with that? Like, there had to be something they could have done to make Moreau's area better and not just make it some kind of one-off area, and then you have a lengthy, boring, broken, unrefined boss fight against Moreau that forced you to be very reliant upon exploits, where you had to get Moreau to hit you, and when he hits you without damaging you, even when he does damage you, he exposes his weak spot to taunt you, and then from there you can follow up with mines, and you just had to craft an absurd amount of mines, because that's how much of a damage sponge he was, and it's the only way to make the fight go by very fast after like 3 minutes, because doing it normally, it takes even longer, and it's a very boring encounter. There are so many moments where Moreau can hit you through the geometry. There are other situations where he can do attacks in situations that you simply cannot avoid. Like, if he does his running attack at a distance, like in a situation where you're pretty close to him, he can hit you every single time because it's impossible to avoid, and it's fucking bullshit. I cannot believe they ruined this area like that, and Moreau completely destroyed my soul in my blind playthrough of Resident Evil Village. At least with the strategy that I found, that still doesn't change the fact that he's just a very bad boss, and the fact that I have to game the system to even make the fight remotely stomachable, that doesn't change how much he's shit. It really doesn't. But it's just so hard to believe that they could make such a mess with Resident Evil Village, but at the same time, there were some good qualities to it, and such a dilemma was something I was going to highlight in my review. But Moreau's area, I cannot believe Moreau was a victim of limited time and budget. That is just so sad and feeble. That really is. And by the way, that strategy that I used against the Vulcan Blubber in the sewers, I basically put Moira up to where the crate is, and then I get Claire to alert the enemies. They'll prioritize her, and while she's just busy standing in the spot where the enemies can't get to her, Moira can sneak by them and use her crowbar to open the way and also to unlock that side area for Barry and Natalia. And then when I need to get Claire over to where Moira is, I basically use a decoy bottle to lure the enemies away, jump down, swap to Moira, and then teleport Claire. That is a very reliable method because wasting time trying to deal with those enemies is a waste of ammo, and it is just tedious. Just don't rely upon that. Just game the system. It's pretty fun just discovering all that. And this commentary has just been interrupted because there is a snake in my room. I don't know where the snake came from, how it got into my house, but I cannot find it. It is a pretty big snake. It must have gone into some kind of opening in my stairs, and it's just hidden away there, so pest control guy is coming in a bit. But this doesn't stop me from doing my commentary. I'm not going to let that rule over my ability to do commentary. But continuing what I was just saying, yeah, just game the system and you'll be fine. And right here, they're going to be enemies in the water, and you can't damage them until they get out of the water. So you're going to have to wait until they get out of the water, or actually just ambush them when they're still in their crawling animation, because it takes them quite a while to actually get out of the crawling state whenever they get back onto land. The shotgun here is very useful. This shotgun in particular, I only use it in this chapter because it's a throwaway shotgun, and I much prefer the double-barreled shotgun because the double-barreled shotgun does a lot more damage than this shotgun. And plus, the double-barreled shotgun doesn't have any pump feature, so it's a faster shotgun overall. And it's one of the shotguns you'll definitely need for Neil's boss fight. But Claire 3, as you can see, is incredibly simple. There's just a lot of gaming the system to actually bypass the enemies, and it's kind of fun just doing it like this. And there is a iron head. One thing you gotta bear in mind is you cannot use your bottles in the water. If they fall into the water, the fuse will be extinguished, and it will not detonate. So just try to make sure you detonate your bottles on land. Here comes this iron head, so I'm just aiming for his weak spot, which is the red area around his neck. And he's trying to hit me through the geometry, which is a big problem in this game. This game does not disable hitboxes through geometry. And you notice this a lot with the Revenants. Revenants in Barry's campaign, they hit you through the geometry a lot when they really shouldn't, and I don't really understand how they could be this lackadaisical when not refining the hitboxes correctly in this game. But then again, with the bosses being crap and with some of the enemies being a little too simple, not much to really say right there. But we move on now. There's just a couple of minor skirmishes with enemies before we get to Neil's boss fight. And I guess I'll talk a bit about Neil, given that there's nothing else to really talk about. But Neil is a pretty dumb fight. He's not as bad as Alex Wesker, but he just moves so fast. And the tracking on his moves is incredible. And his running attack, if you try to dodge the running attack, you always get hit. If you don't run to the side, you will always get hit. You have to make sure that you sprint to the side, like a right angle, in order to avoid his running attack, because it is that absurd with its tracking, and it's unbelievable that they could give him that kind of capability. But Neil infects himself with the Ouroboros virus from Resident Evil 5, so he has the ability to spawn tentacles from his hands, and he fires them at you. Before that point, though, he just tries to melee you and just run towards you. But Neil just has the ability to cancel into animations when he really shouldn't. Like, he's just busy walking towards you, and he goes into a running attack animation just out of the blue. And it's pretty bullshit that can be the case, but this is mainly the case with the second phase. I mean, really, the second phase is the one that's the hardest to deal with because of how much he is just able to track you down. And I do take one cheap hit from Neil in this recording because he hits me through the geometry. And you'll understand what I mean when I say this game just has that huge issue of enemies hitting you through the geometry. Oh, and also right here, these enemies are prioritizing Claire. I guess they're programmed to go after Claire more so than Moira. So I was able to spawn them in as Moira. They're going for Claire, but because Claire is in a position that they can't get to, they'll just be running into a wall. And I'm trying to use this as a way to get Moira to deal with the enemies without Claire wasting her ammo. But really, there isn't much of a point. I think it's just better to use the shotgun because you really don't need that many shotgun shells for Neil if you've been investing in your upgrades and also with your customization kits properly, and you've been saving up on your ammunition for the other weapons and using them accordingly. So yeah, I should just be using the shotgun here. I just wanted to repeat this because I remember doing this with my partner a long time ago. But yeah, there is Moira using her crowbar when she's crouched. There's the stun with the flashlight. And you can see those enemies over there just running into a wall. And it's pretty reliable as a method for actually isolating the enemies. But given that there's nothing else to really talk about at the moment, I'm just going to go on a different tangent. And I mentioned I was doing the review for Resident Evil Village, which I actually am. It's just there's been a lot of distracting elements, like what I've just discussed in the initial parts of this video, that have been taking away from my ability to contribute any further to the review. And even though there were some distracting elements, still doesn't change the fact that I had a lot to say with the initial parts to Resident Evil Village. Like 55 pages from the beginning all the way to Castle Dimitrescu, and there's still that much left of Resident Evil Village to discuss. I don't know what I'm going to be doing for the review. Like, should I just do a full video? Should I separate the video out into parts? It's just the problem with separating the video out into parts is no one's going to watch the later parts, because the thing with YouTube is whenever you have videos in a series, the later videos in that series never get the same amount of views as the earlier videos because people just stop watching entirely. Or I feel like if I separate the review out into parts, the flow is not going to be correct. And I do go on tangents inside of areas like Castle Dimitrescu that don't even relate to Castle Dimitrescu, and instead they talk about the story, and they talk about the mechanics, and they talk about other things as well. And, you know, I'm kind of trying to do a similar format to Under the Mayo's idea of reviews, or similar to Laser Z's ideas of retrospective reviews. And that's kind of the inspiration for this review, but it's really starting to turn into a very lengthy process because there's so much to discuss with Resident Evil Village. And in regards to the story, like just going through the Resident Evil Village review and just isolating each of the individual aspects to Resident Evil Village, there are definitely some confusing elements to Resident Evil Village's story that just drove me insane. And I've been having to collaborate with the Resident Evil podcast team, the team of fans that designed that timeline of the Resident Evil series and have been actively contributing to the lore of Resident Evil Village. Like, I've been having to cooperate with them to clarify a lot of the confusing points about the story. And they've definitely been a big help. And they've definitely helped in understanding a lot of Miranda's motivations, like what the whole point of the Cadou was. Because just based on the way the Cadou was presented in Resident Evil Village, now that I think about it, the Cadou just seems like an extraneous variable. It just feels like Miranda's doing additional work for no reason. And I clarified this with the Resident Evil podcast team, and they said that in Miranda's journal, when she talks about increasing the efficiency of finding a vessel for Ava, see, like, I originally thought that meant she was going to, like, increase the number of individuals she would infect within a certain time duration, or it was expressing the whole idea of Miranda granting certain abilities to the vessel for Ava to allow her to be more in control of her mutation. But the way the Resident Evil podcast team described the Cadou as increasing the efficiency of finding a vessel for Ava is that from an epidemiological perspective, Miranda is making her definition of a vessel for Rose, or for Ava, strict. So she's basically adding a lot more constraints to her definition to actually increase the efficiency of the vessel, basically. So that's what that's for. If the vessel has an affinity for the mold and also an affinity for the Cadou, then they're more qualified to be a vessel for Rose. That's why the Cadou is a thing. And like the reason why I found the Cadou to be very superfluous in the long run is because a lot of the capabilities displayed by the Megamycete in Resident Evil Village, it was already doing a lot of the things that the Cadou was said to be doing, and it seems like the Cadou is primarily for the purpose of horizontal gene transfer between two species in order to create a chimera. And, this was a similar case with Marguerite. Like, Marguerite's mutation in Resident Evil 7 was such a different mutation to Jack Baker's and Lucas's mutations, because hers was sort of a chimera between the normal like mold mutation and through like an insect horizontal gene transfer, because she gained like the capabilities of an insect. She became specially attuned to insects to sort of act as like a queen, and she had a nest inside of her, and like mimicry insects were actually spawning from her. So it just seems like insects actually became a factor to consider with her mutation, or some kind of nematode or parasite. And like the Cadou is a nematode, so that's why I'm calling Marguerite's potential source of infection like possibly resulting from a nematode, because it seems like in some ways these nematodes actually helped in creating this chimera we see in some of the lords with their mutations, when it just seems like they're a combination of certain species, and it seems to be a similar case for Marguerite. So it made it seem like Miranda is essentially creating something similar to Marguerite's chimera mutations in order to create the vessel for Rose. And that's why the Cadou is a thing. So I just thought it was something similar to that. And it was a pretty interesting idea to consider, and it was a very interesting connection to draw between Resident Evil 7 and Resident Evil Village. Still doesn't change the fact that the mold in Resident Evil Village violates a lot of the lore established as to how the mold actually works in Resident Evil 7. I mean, Ethan's mutation is a big example of this, and it's stuff like that I was having to clarify with the Resident Evil podcast team, and it really goes to show just the amount of ambition I am putting into Resident Evil Village to really highlight a lot of the problems present with it. We caught the snake and we threw it outside, so it's no longer infesting my room right now. Thank God for that. We put up quite a fight. It raised its head. It was flicking itself all over the place, moving at speeds I didn't even think was possible, or turning in a way I didn't think was possible for snakes. And it all went well. So, yeah, thank God for that. But we're now in the prepping stage before Neil's boss fight, so the game will give you some ammunition. It will also give you the chance to go to the workbench, to add some customization kits to your weapons. For the shotgun, I put the highest capacity upgrade I can put on it, and I also upgrade the fire rate, and I also put the second highest damage rating on it. For the Magnum, I just put the lowest damage ranking on it because it's already a pretty damaging weapon. There's no real need to increase it even more. And then for the machine gun, I put the highest damage ranking on it so that I can actually max out on its damage. And that's primarily how it goes. And it only takes about 2 cycles worth of damage in order to actually finish off Neil. And Neil, what you need to make sure you have a lot of firebomb bottles, because of course he's been infected by the Ouroboros virus, and of course Ouroboros from Resident Evil 5 is very weak to fire. So the fire will be used to expose his weak spot, and he'll go into a state where he'll complain about burning up, and then he'll go to cool himself down, and during that time you'll be able to damage him. And it only takes 2 cycles worth of that in order to finish him off if you have the right ammunition for it, and you also have the right amount of customization kits for it. And overall, it should be a very simple fight. It's just if he chooses to cheese you or not, that's his ability. Because, like I said in this recording, I got hit through the geometry by Neil's tentacle melee attack, and it was pretty bullshit, and I wasn't going to restart on that. It's those kind of situations that warranted a no healing walkthrough for Resident Evil Revelations 2, and that is why I'm going to stick to it. But once we've done Claire 3, this is really the last engaging part of Claire's campaign, because Claire 4 is so simple because there's only a handful of enemies and they're all Glasps. And you don't even need ammunition to deal with them, because using Mara to knock herself out and then reviving her, you can delay the Glasp from attacking and just get past it before it has a chance to even attack. So that's why this is really the last engaging part to Claire's campaign. But right around the arena, there are going to be these crates that have these gas canisters, and whenever Neil destroys them, he'll set himself on fire, and there will be a trail of fire left, so if he runs through it, he'll get burned. You need to watch out for his running attack. He moves incredibly fast, and he has unlimited sprint, you don't. So positioning is especially important when dealing with Neil. But he primarily tries to do this slam attack right over here, so you need to stand exactly like that in order to get him to hit the canister, because he always uses his right hand. He's running right now, and I believe he warns you he's running because he does a very specific kind of roar. So use that to know when he's running, but he's really close to me right now. And I don't know if this is a thing with Neil or not, but I think the camera has some impact over his ability to do certain moves. Because he's not really doing his running attack right now, which is surprising. I feel like because he's off camera, he's not in a position to really initiate his running attack or his other bullshit moves. He has to get very close to me before he initiates his moves. That's just from what I've noticed, but I don't think that's true. But he's burning up right now, and by the way, the second time he goes into that animation of burning up, he'll leave behind a trail of Ouroboros that will actually stun you, and you'll have to break free from it. So bear that in mind for the second time he goes into this state, but just aim everything you've got into his weak spot. And once enough damage has been dealt, he'll mutate and he'll get a tentacle arm. And this is where it gets a little bit more challenging. And by the way, whenever Neil destroys the canisters, ammunition will drop from them, which is one good thing about this fight. You don't have to waste time just using like melee strategies. The game gives you a lot of ammunition. Why you couldn't get this much ammunition in Alex Wesker's boss fight is beyond me. But with how much punishment Alex Wesker takes, I'm having to resort to like knife strategies and just glitching out her AI or just trying to get her into a position where I can exploit her ability to recognize my hitbox through the geometry. And did you see that just then? That's what I mean when I say Neil has the ability to do animations that he really shouldn't be able to do. He did a running attack animation without having to run first. And it's bullcrap like that that can catch you out occasionally, so you've got to really pay attention to what Neil is doing before you decide to do anything. And I'm coming up here. You'll want to mainly use this upper area as a way to put some distance between yourself and Neil. He's right there, so I'm just going to use my firebomb bottles. There's a reason why you need to use tricks like the door exploit, and also with like crafting a lot of firebomb bottles. It's for this boss fight. You can also use Moira's flashlight, but it doesn't do a lot of damage. I don't know if the amount of damage elicited by Moira's flashlight towards Neil is augmented by the flashlight upgrades that you can get in the skill tree system. But either way, there really isn't a lot of incentive to use Moira's flashlight. You put yourself in a dangerous position to use Moira's flashlight to actually ignite Neil. But he's down on the ground again. He's trying to come after me. Pay attention to the sound effects to know what move he's doing. Use your pistol to destroy those Ouroboros clusters on the ground so that you don't get caught on them. Even though my pistol doesn't have any damage upgrades, they go down after about like 3 hits, which is cool. But there was his long-range attack. This is where I get hit through the geometry. Watch this bullshit right here. Watch this. See that? I don't even think that touched me. He hit me through the geometry, and it didn't even touch me, which is so bullshit. But it had to happen at this point right here, where he's on his last life, and this is where I'm going to be able to finish him off. So I just need to get rid of that cluster right there, but then I realize, oh, I don't need to. So I'm just going to pump everything I have into him. So really the only weapon I have is the shotgun, but that's all I need, and he's done. See? He goes down super fast. Why couldn't this be the same with Alex? Why is it that Alex Wesker has like the most amount of life ever in this game, and the weak spots are so ambiguous with her because the amount of damage you need to deal to her in order to actually expose her weak spot, it varies all the time, and there's no consistency to it. And it just leads to a dragged out mess, and it's just a poor excuse for a final boss fight. And I would honestly say that Resident Evil Revelations 2 has the worst final boss ever in the entire series. Minus, like, Resident Evil Remake and Resident Evil 0, of course. But, yeah, this is the end of Claire 3. Stay tuned for the future episodes. Thank you all for watching, and you take care now.